Now let's talk about the actual deck list. On your screen, I have one deck list that I've been using for quite some time. I've considered keeping it to myself only in the event I would ever attend a tournament. I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. Considering the unfortunate current state of affairs with this archetype and many other duelists now dropping the deck and just abandoning it, I think now is the time to talk about these ideas in practice and in application. I call this Primite Heroes. I have not invented this idea. I'm not the inventor. This is just my list, but there was a gentleman piloted Primite Heroes successfully before named Jeremy Thibault. This was 4 to 5 months ago. We'll give credit where credit is due. If anyone piloted or developed the idea or discovered the idea of Primite Heroes, I'll give credit to that guy. What's interesting about Primite Heroes is comparing Primite Roar with the Fiendsmith archetype, like Lacrima. When you look at the Fiendsmith archetype, like Fiendsmith Tract, what you have here is a spell card that basically special summons a level 4 monster from the main deck, and that level 4 monster offers a disruption. So it's an E-Tele for level 4 monsters, but it also offers a disruption through the form of Fiendsmith and Paradise in the Grave. Okay, alright, that's impressive, that's good. While it is true that that's very, very good, I mean, 1 Carlo 4 extender and a disruption, Primite Roar does the same thing, but with less. To do it with Fiendsmiths, you would require an entire engine. It would require multiple spots in the extra deck and in the main deck to be occupied, just so you can do that. With Primite Roar, all you need is a Sparkman or a Clayman in the main deck, and that's pretty much it. It's very low commitment insofar as our spots in the main deck, and that's a good thing. Primite Roar is both an extender for level 4s and a disruption, but requires less spots, which makes this a superior alternative over using Fiendsmith Tract into Lacrima, sending Fiendsmith in Paradise. Another beautiful thing about Primite Roar are 2 other aspects. The first is Primite Roar is never going to conflict with the Hero Lives. And the last benefit is Primite Roar actually special summons not just any level 4 elemental hero monster, but it special summons a vanilla. So we are setting our grave up for Miracle Fusion into Infernal Rage a lot quicker, a lot easier. Now when it comes to this Primite engine, when it comes to Primite Heroes, there's 2 ways you could go about this. You can either lean into the engine by maxing out Lordly Load, Roar, and Drill Beam, or you can just play 2 Lordly Lord, 1 Roar, and 1 Drill Beam. The difference between the 2, the pro and the con, really is just Drill Beam, and whether or not you think it is significant or not. This deck list you see on the screen, I've leaned into the Primite engine. I'm choosing to lean into it and max it out because I believe Drill Beam is an exceptionally overpowered card. My Drill Beam is basically an MST that negates, which makes it a childhood memorabilia. Imagine you're going first, you normal summon Vyon, and the opponent wants to use Infinite Impermanence to negate Vyon. Drill Beam denies that. Imagine if the opponent wants to use Dominance Impulse. Drill Beam denies that. Imagine if your opponent wants to use Dominance Purge. Drill Beam denies that. Imagine if you're going second and you're up against Ryzeal Detonator. Well, guess what? Why would you run Forbidden Droplet when you can run Primite Drill Beam instead? You see, just like cards like Ian Shuffle, Primite Drill Beam, most people would say, is a terrible card because they cannot read past the first sentence. The requirement of having a Primite or a Vanilla in hand is too much to bear for some people. And if it is, then you can always just run one Drill Beam, 2 Lordly Load, 1 Primite Roar, and call it a day. But if you want to play going first or second and out that Detonator and banish it, or out any of those trap cards that are hand traps, then Drill Beam is the way to go. Lean into the Primite engine, and Drill Beam will always be live. you do the math, you run a play set of each, and let's say you have 2 vanillas in the main deck like I do on the screen with Sparkman and Clayman. That means if you have 1 drill beam in hand, you only need to see 1 of the other 10 cards. 10 out of 40, that's 25%. You have a significantly high probability of resolving drill beam in this deck. When you couple this with the fact that you main deck Shifter and you main decked Call by the Grave, well then guess what? You become even more impervious to hand traps. On this screen, you only see me run 1 Dimension Shifter. This is optional. The main deck, you can easily run 3. You can easily run a playset. It's really not a big deal. Right now I'm testing between running 1 Shifter or running 3. The benefit of running 1 is if there's only 1 Shifter, then we don't have to suffer from the marginal rate of diminishing returns. If you want to learn more about what the marginal rate of diminishing returns is, take a look at the video hyperlinked above. Dimension Shifter is a card that even though you run 3 of in a playset of, the truth is you can only resolve it probably once in a typical duel, most cases. So the philosophy behind only running 1 is I keep that diminishing returns rate as low as possible. I see it, great. I'm going to use it, and I'm never going to see another one for the rest of the duel. If I don't see it, that's fine, because I only run 1. I don't run 3. I'm not going to top deck any bricks anytime soon. Cards like Primite Lordly Load are a 1 card rank 4. They're a 1 card Baguska. You think about before Primite existed, when you think about how did heroes establish a decent board with minimal commitment without running into Nibiru, the go-to solution was always to have Baguska and Darklaw side by side. For example, it would require either a Hero Lives and Mask Change, or it would require a Hero Lives and Vyon. Just because you can end on Baguska and Darklaw side by side to each other under 5 summons, it's nice, but we're talking about a Hero Lives here. We're talking about Vyon. We're talking about some of the greatest, if not the greatest 1 card combos that the entire hero deck, the entire hero archetype has to offer. And we need to see both of them just to end on Darklaw Baguska under 5 summons. That's not ideal. It's not great. But when you talk about Shifter, when you talk about Primite Lordly Load, well then, congrats. You didn't dedicate any of your 1 card powerhouse cards, and you still were able to play through Nibiru in a way that required minimal commitment, and you have set up a reasonably respectable board. Most decks cannot play through Shifter and Baguska on the field. Well, I should say Baguska on the field and Shifter resolved. But it's the equivalent. It's no different from Darklaw Baguska. Kashtira was a deck that mained Shifter, and they had their own version of Darklaw. There's no reason why heroes should not be maining Shifter and doing a similar strategy. Take notes from some of the best decks in the past and implement them into today's meta game. You may also notice on the screen a very special lady in the main deck on the team. Her name is Fireflint Lady. You may be wondering why she's in the deck. Here's the answer. You never need to play Vision Hero Ferris and Vision Hero Increase ever again. You never need to play those cards ever again, because Fireflint Lady exists. That's a powerful and bold statement. Let's back it up. For example, if you have Shadow Mist, which most people would consider a brick, most people would consider, hey, I don't ever want to see Shadow Mist in my hand. In this deck, Shadow Mist is not a soft brick. She is actually a starter. If you have Shadow Mist plus any level 4 extender, congratulations. You have full combo. You normal summon Shadow Mist, you special summon the level 4 extender, which in this case is most likely going to be through Primite Roar. And you're going to Xyz summon King Dempsey. King Dempsey gives you the Fireflint Lady, and then you can use Dempsey and detach Shadow Mist so that he's protected by his own effect, and Shadow Mist adds Vyon. Finally, you just special summon Flint Lady, and then send her to the graveyard to special summon Vyon to the field. Yeah, wild, right? That's pretty strong. That is pretty robust. There's nobody in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community that's thought or have considered outside of the box thinking like that before. I promoted this idea before in the Hero Discord, and now I'm resurfacing it again because this is an idea that needs to be strongly taken into consideration. Even if Isolde is not available to us, this is something that is very profound. We're talking about consistently accessing, consistently special summoning Vision Hero Vyon from the main deck, regardless of not seeing him in hand. You only run 4 copies of Vyon. You have 3 Vyon and 1 Rhoda, that's it, in the 40 card deck. And yet, despite that limitation, we can consistently special summon Vyon from the main deck, rather from the hand technically, consistently, without fairness, without increase. We're not limited, we're not constrained by those, accept heroes for the rest of the turn clauses. Our Flint Lady also protects Vyon from Imperm, protects Vyon from Veiler, protects Vyon from Ghost Mourner. This is a very powerful thing that needs to be resurfaced and discussed more. Shadow Mist is not a brick, she's a starter. And the same is true for Stratos, not just Shadow Mist. You can apply the same thing with Stratos. Stratos plus level 4 extender gives you King Dempsey and Vyon. You know what else is true? Dead in Prison. Dead in Prison plus level 4 extender results in the exact same end board. That's not an end board, that's the wrong terminology, but that is the exact same access. You have Dempsey and Vyon side by side via sending Shadow Mist as a cost through Dead in Prison's effect. When you look at this deck list on the screen, you have 3 Vyon, 2 Dead in Prison, 1 Shadow Mist, 1 Stratos. That's 7 normal summons or 7 starters. All of them give us Vyon. Now, the final thing is, you're probably wondering, what exactly is the end board for a deck list like this? Well, the end board is pretty substantial, actually, I would say, because it doesn't require that many bricks. As you can see in the main deck, we have very little bricks. We have Sinister Necrom, 2 vanillas, and that's pretty much about it. I guess if you want to call Favorite Contact or Miracle Fusion a brick, or the Trap Holes, yeah, for sure, yeah, but those aren't necessarily bricks because they're disruptions. You can set them. Refer back to the bodies video if you need further clarity on this. So here's the end board, step by step. Let's talk about 1 card combo, actually 1.5. Let's say Vyon plus any card in the game. Step 1 is you normal summon Vyon, uses effect, send Sinister Necrom to the grave, banish it, special summon Dead in Prison from the main to the field. Use Dead in Prison to send Shadow Mist for cost. She's gonna add Clayman to hand. Use Vyon, banish the Shadow Mist to add Poly. Then use Poly to fuse the Dead in Prison and the Clayman in hand into a Sunrise, who then gives you Miracle Fusion. Then you will link off the Sunrise and the Vyon for a Wonder Driver. Then you activate the Miracle Fusion to fusion summon the Infernal Wingman. Will then reset the Miracle Fusion from the graveyard and add Favorite Contact to hand. Then you can tribute the Infernal Wingman in order to fusion summon, rather special summon, Aquaneos. And then you can use Aquaneos to discard that random card in your hand if you want, to turn your bricks, if you have any in hand, into ways to get rid of cards from your opponent's hand. Aquaneos is key here because it's not just a Neos fusion monster, which is going to segue into Neos Lord without the need to run a level 7 brick in the main deck. But Aquaneos is also a water monster, which gives us access to absolute 0. So what you do is, after you have reset the Miracle, you're going to link off your Aquaneos and Infernal Driver into SP Little Knight. Then you activate the Miracle Fusion to fusion summon absolute 0. And then finally, you set the Favorite Contact. And so the end board is, with 1 card, or 1.5, you don't really need that 0.5. You don't have to discard, but is there if you want to. But the end board is essentially a way to end on a SP Little Knight and an absolute 0 side by side with each other, which means, if you remember the Prank Kids format, You're basically Raigekiing your opponent every single turn. That's a very powerful thing. It's a perpetual Raigeki. You just use SP Little Knight, remove Ab-Zero from the field. It's your turn. They come back. You do it again. It's their turn. They come back. You do it again. And you do it perpetually. If any of them are targeted for negation, you can use favorite contact and chain it in order to send one of them and shuffle it back to the extra deck to fusion summon Neos Lord by reshuffling that Aqua Neos as banished from Miracle Fusion as another form of disruption. So you end on Neos Lord, you end on a Absolute Zero Raigeki, you end on SP Little Knight, and you also discarded a card from the opponent's hand. So they have a 5-card hand. On top of that, the card that you discarded and destroyed from their hand is actually banished because of SP Little Knight. First effect. It's a pretty good end board, but it gets even better because if you have Vyon plus Primite Roar, or if you have a Hero Lives plus Primite Roar, then guess what? You end on that same end board plus Rafflesia. Now you're pretty much guaranteeing victory at this point, because now your board is impervious to Nibiru, among other hand traps. And on top of that, because you use Primite Roar, you've given yourself yet another disruption in the graveyard. It's a very, very, very robust end board, and it needs to be taken into consideration more. It did not require Cross Crusader, it did not require Fusion Destiny, it did not require Evil Assault. We didn't talk about Ferris. We don't need Ferris anymore. We have Fireflint Lady and King Dempsey on our side. It's a very powerful end board. Now that we've talked about the end board, I'm going to talk about 2 other things about this deck list you see on the screen. The first takeaway is the ratio. Ratio we have here, you see 3 Vyon, 3 Hero Lives, and 1 Rhoda. A lot of hero decks, you'll see 3 Ferris, 3 Malicious, and 1 Denier. So the common practice, you have any of those 7 cards, plus Stratos. Gives you apparently full combo. And it does in the old version of Heroes. People depend heavily on Malicious, because Stratos plus Ferris, or Stratos plus Malicious, or Stratos plus Denier is full combo. Well, imagine if we replace those 7 cards with our own 7 cards. We have 3 Hero Lives, 3 Vyon, and 1 Rhoda. You can actually extend this 7 ratio into 8 if you wanted to main deck 1 Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial into Sinister Necrom is a very, very powerful tactic. It's actually more powerful than Evil Assault into Dead in Prison, because Foolish Burial does not constrain you to heroes only, whereas Evil Assault does. Imagine if you have this ratio of 7, 3 Vyon, the 3 Hero Lives, and the 1 Rhoda, plus any level 4 extender, particularly Primite Roar. Replace Stratos with Primite Roar. This is a suitable replacement for a 2-card combo if you're trying to end on Rafflesia, like this deck is. Last takeaway I want to talk about with respect to this deck list on the screen is the side deck. You see I'm running the Nemesis 3-card package. It's because most hero players are not thinking outside the box or choosing to restrict themselves to hero only. They're never going to consider this. This is a very big deal. It's a very big deal because Vyon is a 1-card Protoss. The Hero Lives is a 1-card Protoss. Rhoda is a 1-card Protoss. Dead in Prison is a 1-card Protoss. Foolish Burial is also a 1-card Protoss. Then you have a lot of 2-card Protoss in the form of Shadow Mist plus level 4 extender, or Stratos plus level 4 extender. That's another 2-card Protoss. Imagine if you're going into game 2, you've identified what deck your opponent is running, and let's say it's Malice, and you just completely switch on them and say, hey, I'm just gonna go into Protoss and lock you out of Dark Monsters. Imagine if you were up against Fiendsmith and you called Light. The same is true if you were up against Ryziel and you called Light. Fact of the matter is, if Crystal Beasts have Sapphire Pegasus, they have their 1-card Protoss, well, so do we. We have more than they do, actually. Thanks to cards like A Hero Lives. And in the next deck list, you'll see E-Call, which makes this even more consistent. Here's the last deck list I want to showcase. Before I do, I just want to emphasize one more point regarding Foolish Burial into Sinister Necrom being the superior approach over Evil Assault into Dead in Prison into Sinister Necrom. And that last point is this idea of Sinister Spam. You know, a lot of Fiendsmith hero decks, they use Aerial Eater as a way to send Necrom to the graveyard which will then give access to the entire hero engine. This is very unique because Aerial Leader is not the only way to send Necrom to the grave from the extra deck. Did you know that if you main decked a single copy of Phoenix Shrine or Warrior, Cherubini can accomplish the same thing? And guess what? If 2 level 3s is all you need to access the hero engine, imagine those words, hero engine. Imagine turning heroes into an engine just because you run Cherubini into Phoenix Shrine or Warrior into Necrom, or Aerial Leader into Sinister Necrom. Imagine if instead of running Cherubini, you had 2 level 7 monsters on your field and you turned them into Dracosac. Then Dracosac gave you Cherubini. So any 2 level 3 monsters or any 2 level 7 monsters on your field can basically grant you access from your extra deck consistently into the rest of your hero engine. Because Necrom makes it all possible. Dead End Prison actually makes it all possible because that's the primary target for Necrom. Just something to consider. Going back to the main point in the final deck list I'm going to showcase to you. I call this Shifter Hero. This is, in my opinion, stronger than the previous deck list I showed you. Concept is the same. We have our go-to 7 cards. A Hero Lives, Vyon, 1 Rhoda. We have a lot of starters, Dead End Prison, Stratos, Shadow Mist. The key takeaway here is not only do we max out the shifters because they don't conflict with Bubble Man, but guess what? Bubble Man is in the deck. E-Call's in the deck. This deck list is for those who are thinking about only 2 Lordly Load, 1 Roar, 1 Drill Beam, and take the E-Call route instead. This is a great course of action because it allows you to still have access to level 4 extenders in the form of Bubble Man, or your Shadow Mist, or for your Dead End Prison, or for your Stratos, or for your Hero Lives or Vyon. Because again, any level 4 extender plus your Hero Lives, or any level 4 extender plus Vyon, and you're going to end on that board plus Rafflesia. It's a very robust end board. What's also nice as an added benefit is the fact that E-Call is also a starter, because it can get you access to Shadow Mist if you already have a level 4 extender. It can get you access to Stratos if you already have a level 4 extender. So either you max out the Primite Roar option, which gives you extender and disruption, or you can max out the E-Call option, which gives you extender and starter. We'll say though that this version, albeit it does pop off more often thanks to the E-Calls, it does not play through hand traps as good as a version of this deck with triple Drill Beam in the main. If you wanted, you could run triple Drill Beam, triple Shifter, and the 1 Call By in the main and pretty much play through all hand traps. Be impervious to Drill and Lockbird, be impervious to Imperm, impervious to you name it. Imagine a scenario where you normal summon Dead End Prison, use effect and send Sinister Necrom for cost, and you banish Necrom for cost in order to special summon a 2nd copy of Dead End Prison from the main deck, and then drop Shifter, instead of shotgunning Shifter. Same can be said for Vyon. Anyway, that was the main takeaway. That's the main message I'm getting across here. Hope you guys find value into this new way of playing heroes as a level 4 rank 4 access with the capability of XC summoning, but still keeps its roots with fusion summoning. It's a way to play through hand traps with the focus on Shifter and a focus on Rafflesia. It's a way that we do not limit ourselves and constrain ourselves with Evil Assaults and Fusion Destinies and all these other Ferris and all these other cards that are constraining us to our archetype only. See y'all in the next one.
Stand your ground.